Hello, sir. I think this will be our last discussion post for my master's program. So I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you've done for me. And I've really loved this course. So for the final time, I'll move forward with our discussion post. This week in the discussion, I want you to consider how your study of the Sermon on the Mount has shaped your understanding of the following: Jesus' identity, Jesus' mission, and the path of discipleship. As a bonus, but not requirement, if there are any questions or prayer requests you'd like to share with your classmates, feel free to do so. I think, first and foremost, the way that the Sermon on the Mount has changed the way that I see or understand Jesus' identity is he truly is the Messiah. And I know that's kind of elementary to the people, like to us, right? But I've been reading in Hebrews recently, and that he was a priest after the order of Melchizedek, and that is like a very sought after, very set apart person. First of all, Melchizedek. And that kind of comparison really is huge. And the reason I bring that up is Christ truly is a priest, and he is our high priest. And he shows us that in his teaching skills. But he is also a king, because he has the authority to interpret and to be able to teach and enforce these things. But he's also a teacher. He's also a brother. He does so on such a level with everyone else, or what we see in the parables and how he speaks to people, that he's doing it because he loves them, not because he is a priest, but because he loves them, right? So he has those three levels that are key to his identity, and are key to his person and his purpose, truly. And really, I think studying the Sermon on the Mount is perfect to discover that, because he shows all three of those in one sermon. He is king, he is a priest, he is a brother. He cares for us. He wants to teach us. He wants us to lead holy lives, and he has the power and authority to rule over that, and to tell and to teach with authority, which is what they said at the end of the sermon, right? And I really think that just reinforces Christ's identity the way that we know it. And studying the Sermon on the Mount for 8 weeks really is really eye-opening, purely because he really does show all three of those things. The way it shapes my understanding of Jesus' mission, when I first started reading this, and it's really easy for people to see it this way, the Sermon on the Mount obviously is the first of Jesus's discourses, and or the largest at least, and it's really, every time that I ever thought of the Sermon on the Mount, I just pictured Christ standing up on a hill, looking at his disciples and saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," and like he's kind of performing, but he's also teaching, right? But like it's my theatrical mind that's coming to play, and it's really like this. I'm picturing the people being like, "Oh wow," the whole time, But his mission isn't to entertain. It's not to draw that kind of attention. And I think the way that I see it now, genuinely, is he is coming to interpret the Old Testament. He's coming to show what the New Testament is. He's here to show where they had missed the mark with the Old Testament, and where they hadn't interpreted or applied correctly. And it shows, there's a scene, and I've harped on this a few times over the past few weeks, but I don't know if you watched The Chosen. I haven't. I've just started recently watching it, and I know that in our last class we talked about the first few commandments and how it relates to like creating images of the Lord, which we'll talk about that later. Which honestly played a part in me waiting so long to watch it. But there's a scene at the beginning of the series that Christ is in the wilderness with a bunch of children, and they're helping him build a hut or something. And they're all working, and he's teaching them, he's talking to them. And he's like, go ahead and show me, do you guys pray? And they were like, yes, we pray. And he said, well, pray for me. And then they just started saying the prayer that all of the Jews know, and they're saying it without emotion. They even continue doing exactly what they're doing. They say it in a monotone, like they've been taught to chant it, basically. And you watch Christ's, the actor, right? You watch his face go from joy to heartbreak, like as this is happening, and he looks distraught, but he's also like in awe, And at the end of it, he says, "That's beautiful. Good job." The thing is like with that, they have no heart behind what they're saying. And that was the problem with the Old Testament and the Pharisees and the Hebrew people, is that they didn't have the heart behind it. They saw the law, they did what they thought they did what they were supposed to do, but they were missing the point of it. And that broke his heart, and that's what we saw with those children. But Jesus' mission is to show the heart behind it, and it's to properly interpret the Old Testament and to really show them what the kingdom of heaven actually is. And I think that's what I'm going to take away from that, is Jesus' whole mission. And that's what he's doing with the Sermon on the Mount, is he is showing everything that they would have already heard and say, this is how you're actually supposed to think about it. And I think that's incredible. And how has the Sermon on the Mount shaped my understanding of the path of discipleship? I love that Christ taught with authority, and it's really easy to focus on that as like with disciples. But I think I'm going to take away, not necessarily. I think I'm going to take away the way that he illustrated things. And he did them in such a way. So like I'll talk about my paper for a second. Obviously I wrote about anger, and that's verses 21 through 26. And he basically goes forward and says in verse 21 that, you've heard it said, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. Whoever says you fool will be liable to the hell of fire. And then he goes on. So like, well, first of all, he flips it, and he says, like, I'm taking it a step further, and I'm telling you, you have to check the heart posture behind yourself. It's not just the act of murder. It's it's what leads to it, right? It's what causes it. And that's what you have to be reconciled with. And that is the teaching moment, right? And I could stop there, but he didn't, right? So I shouldn't. And he goes on and he explains it in a way that they would understand. And he says, so if you are offering your gift at the altar and you remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. So he's saying, like, obviously the illustration here is, if you remember that something is against you, or somebody does, right? You got to clear that up, because otherwise there's something holding you back from reconciliation with the Lord, because you're not reconciled with your brother. So this is a not necessarily a lesser example, but this is one example in one frame with personal relation. And then he takes it a step further and gives another side of the coin, and he says, come to terms quickly with your accuser while you're going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge. So he's saying here that, like, on the other side of it, if you've done something wrong, you need to go fix that, because you are liable to judgment. So he's giving all these examples and giving all these illustrations that would make sense to them after teaching them. And I think that that's the most important thing in discipleship, because I can spit scripture all I want to somebody, but if they don't understand what I'm saying, or I can't put it in a way that they do understand, then what's the point? Which I know that we rely on the Spirit for that, and we rely on the conviction of the Spirit for that. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Like, people have to be able to hear it and understand it. So, But I think that's it. I think just prayer requests, pray for our department. It's a lot of fun right now. Obviously, I look a little tired, but it's a lot of fun right now. It's a lot of work right now, but I know that we're doing good. Everybody has a hard time at the end of the semester, so I am praying for you. I'm praying for your classes and for your department as well. And I would just really, I would ask prayer for understanding on everyone else's parts as we introduce this like kind of waitlist system for housing next year. So just patience on everybody else's part, and understanding and grace would probably be the best thing for the next few months. But I appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much.